Hello, ready, steady, free-fromers. Today we are going to make some big fat cookies. So, free-from nutty big cookies coming your way. Let's get cooking. So in here I have 3 cups of ground almonds, almond flour, okay? Then the recipe that I've actually got from Pinterest from Fed and Fit, I'm going to adapt it. So it calls for 1 cup of chocolate chips, so instead we're going to be using sultanas. Now I'm using sultanas because I prefer sultanas over raisins, but you can use raisins, you can use any dried fruit that you like, or none at all, so that's really up to you. Then we want 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then 1/2 teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, baking soda. All the dry ingredients going in this bowl. Now it says to use 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. I currently don't have any vanilla extract. I have some brewing, so to speak, but it's only a couple of months old, so it's not ready yet. So I've got some ground up vanilla pods in there. So that is the dry ingredients. So I'll give this a stir. I'm not putting the sultanas or the bigger nuts in yet. I'm going to do that at the end. So we have 1/3 cup of honey. We have an egg. We have 2 tablespoons of coconut oil. Now, if you melt your coconut oil, make sure you don't do it and put it straight in with the egg because it'll start to cook the egg. A vanilla extract would normally go in with this as well. So combine these wet ingredients. Okay, so the recipe calls for 1 cup of nuts, and I've got some nuts soaking here because I struggle to digest nuts a lot of the time, so I've soaked them. They've been soaking for about 1.5 hours, something like that. It's ideal if you can soak them for a couple of hours or even overnight, depending on how well you tolerate them. If you tolerate them absolutely fine, you don't need to soak them at all. So I'm just going to drain them, rinse them, and then I'm going to pop them in the oven for a few minutes just to toast them. So just going to scatter them widely on the sheet. I've got the oven on about 350. And here I've got pecans and walnuts. The recipe calls for walnuts, but I'm not a huge fan of walnuts. They're okay, but I prefer pecans, but I didn't have a whole cup of pecans. So just taking them out of the oven, you can usually tell when they're done because you get that lovely nutty smell coming. And as soon as you smell those nuts, then you take them out of the oven. So they're in there for about 5 minutes. So I'm just going to leave them to cool and then I'm going to chop them. Right, so we've got the dry ingredients, we've got the wet ingredients, we're going to combine it all together now. Now you can see it's a very thick mixture. Okay, so into this we're going to add the sultanas. Now I've done just under a cup of sultanas, and that's because it's quite a lot of sultanas in that mix. Now the size of the chopping of the nuts is entirely up to you. You can whiz them up in a food processor if you wanted to, or you can just chop them lightly. It's really up to you. There we are, so they're roughly chopped and they're all going to go into the cookie mix. Now you can use your hands to combine this if you want to. It's really up to you. It is a stiff mixture and it is fully loaded, as you can see. Okay, so now we're going to put them on the baking tray. Now these are big fat cookies, so we're looking about the size of a golf ball really. So I'm not going to make them into shapes or anything yet. I'm just going to form the rough size of the balls of cookie dough and then even them out at the end. Right, so we've got them all roughly the same size. There's no rocket science in it. I'm not weighing them and measuring them. I'm just going by my eye. Some will be bigger than another, but the important thing is that they're all about the same depth when I press them down. Now, these aren't going to spread when we're cooking them, so we're just going to go for a rough shape, and they're going to be the best part of an inch thick. So they are fantastic. I'm just going to push in any sultanas. There we go. Now, if your fingers are sticking to the cookies when you're pressing them down, just have a little pot of water on hand that you can just dip your fingers into. Just stop that sticking. Don't use too much, but when you do need it, just use it. Okay, so they are all flattened out. They're probably 3/4 of an inch thick, so good, thick, fully loaded cookies. And we're going to put them in the oven at 350 for about between 10 and 13 minutes. So here we go. Okay, so they were in about 12 minutes, and you can see they are lovely golden brown at the edges, a little bit on top. They smell divine. So we're going to leave them to cool for 5-10 minutes before I take them off the sheet, otherwise they will crack and crumble, and they need some time to cool to firm together. So we'll come back shortly. So I've left them 10 minutes just over to cool, and I've been able to take them all off of the tray, and quite successfully. And you can see the bottoms there, nice and brown but not burnt, and they're still warm. Okay, so we're going to do the cheeky taste test, and I'll let you know how these have turned out. They're so thick, it's just beautiful. Okay, so on the outside, and this will get better as they cool, there's kind of a thicker consistency, so there's a bite to it and there's a chewiness. So you've got lovely soft inside, and it's all kind of fluffy, and oh, it's just absolutely lovely. And the outside is firm, chewy, and just absolutely delicious. Every mouthful you get big chunks of nuts and sultanas, and the sweetness is perfect. I did a good 1/3 cup of honey. You know, it was kind of heaped a little bit if you can heap honey. They're really good. They freeze really well, and the longer you leave them, the chewier they become. You know, the chewy consistency on the outside, the soft, fluffy middle. What more could you want from a cookie? Big, thick, packed full of stuff, crunchy, chewy, soft, fluffy. Oh, perfect. So I will see you next time in the kitchen.